The night air was thick with an unsettling calm, as the stars twinkled silently over the quiet neighborhood of Enisdale Drive in Isle of Wight County, Virginia. It was an ordinary Saturday evening, September 23rd, 2017, when the tranquility was shattered by a frantic call to 911. The phone line crackled with urgency as Paul Stars Jr., a visibly distressed young man, reached out for help. 911, what's your emergency? The operator's voice was steady, a beacon of reassurance in the midst of chaos. Oh no, my grandmother, Sheen. Paul's words tumbled out in a rush, the panic evident in his voice. My uncle is here. The phone, Days and both call are, I'm the grandson. They're either dead in there or lying down. Somebody's in there. Paul Stars Jr. was speaking rapidly, his mind racing with fear and uncertainty. His words were disjointed, a testament to the turmoil he was experiencing. He continued, his voice cracking with desperation. Paul Stars Jr.'s called LED deputies to a welfare check, but what they discovered at the scene was beyond anything they could have imagined. Pete, who had been staring at the crime scene when Paul Starr Jr. was killed, finally returned to his post, his grim expression making it clear. At that moment, the sheriff's office was thrust into a nightmare scenario. The deputies, trained for emergencies yet often unprepared for the horrors they might encounter, arrived at the address with a sense of duty and trepidation. The address was located in the 4,000 block of Enisdale Drive, a residential area known for its peacefulness and close-knit community. As the deputies approached the residence, the scene that unfolded before them was nothing short of horrifying. The front door was ajar, its splintered frame a stark sign of forced entry. The body cam footage captured the unsettling silence that enveloped the house, broken only by the distant sounds of the neighborhood settling into the night. Guns were drawn, and nerves were on edge, as the officers cautiously stepped inside, their senses heightened for any sign of an intruder. The interior was a chaotic mess. Furniture lay overturned, drawers yanked open, and personal belongings were strewn across the floor in disarray. A strange, strong odor hung in the air, a grim reminder that something terrible had transpired within these walls. The deputies moved methodically through each room, their eyes scanning every shadow, every corner, ensuring no hidden danger lurked within the darkened spaces. In the master bedroom, the sight that greeted them was beyond their worst nightmares. Nancy Stars, an 80-year-old woman, lay at the foot of the bed, her body unnervingly frozen in a position that suggested she had been standing or sitting moments before. A single, fatal gunshot wound to her head marked the end of her life, a brutal execution without mercy. The room bore the scars of violence, bullet holes in the walls, shattered glass, and the remnants of a life abruptly cut short. The deputies moved swiftly to check on Kenneth Stars, Nancy's 59-year-old son. They found him in a back bedroom, his lifeless body sprawled in a pool of blood. Multiple gunshot wounds to his hand, chest, and torso indicated a frantic struggle, a desperate fight for survival that ultimately proved futile. The dual tragedy of mother and son, both victims of a vicious attack, left the deputies grappling with the sheer brutality of the crime scene. Your father, Paul Stars Jr., was visibly devastated as the gravity of the situation settled in. His face etched with sorrow and confusion, he attempted to articulate his thoughts, but his statements quickly raised red flags among the investigating officers. Everything in the world is up to me, and I can have nothing to do, he declared, words that didn't align with the behavior expected of someone in mourning. His face began to turn purple, her breathing became shallow. His face contained that such a peculiar statement was enough to cast suspicion on him, hinting at possible involvement in the unfolding tragedy. As Jessica made her way to the back of the cruiser, she saw the rest of her party. As the investigation began in earnest, the deputies meticulously documented the scene. The house, once a home filled with memories and love, was now a chaotic battleground of violence and despair. Furniture lay in disarray, drawers were forcibly opened, and personal items were scattered across the floor, indicating that the intruders had been searching for something specific, or perhaps leaving a message of destruction. Among the most alarming discoveries was the state of the gun cabinet, which had been ransacked. The firearms that were once neatly stored were now conspicuously absent, their contents stolen in the act of violence. Investigators found .40 caliber shell casings scattered across both rooms, and bullet holes piercing the walls, evidence of the frantic gunfire that had erupted during the attack. Yet the murder weapon itself was missing, a crucial piece of evidence that would become central to unraveling the mystery. The black shade of the flashlight kept returning to Tiffany's mind as she wondered if the flame from the mystery had found its way back to her dearest Christine. The scene painted a grim picture of a planned and deliberate invasion, not the random act of a burglar gone wrong. The presence of two missing vehicles, a grey 2010 Ford F-150 and a beige 2001 Chrysler Town & Country minivan, further pointed to the involvement of two perpetrators. This suggested a coordinated effort, a calculated move that escalated a simple welfare check into a double homicide investigation. As the deputies processed the scene, they couldn't help but notice Paul Jr.'s odd behavior. His demeanor, though outwardly devastated, seemed to conceal something more sinister. His emotional statements, coupled with his suspicious remarks, left a chilling imprint on the officers' minds. Was it pure grief that clouded his judgment, or was there something darker at play? The deputies knew they had to delve deeper, to uncover the truth behind his unsettling words. The investigation quickly expanded beyond the immediate crime scene. The detectives began interviewing family members, piecing together the intricate web of relationships and motives that could have led to such a heinous act. Paul Jr.'s father, Paul Sr., staunchly denied any involvement from his son, vouching for his character and expressing unwavering belief in his innocence. The case against him was swiftly proceeding. My son loved his meme. My son loved his Uncle Kenny. He would have done anything in this world to protect him, including giving up his own life, Paul Sr. insisted, his voice thick with emotion. His eyes filled with tears as he told the story of friends dying in his garden. My son loved his meme. Despite the father's assertions, the early suspicions surrounding Paul Jr. couldn't be easily dismissed. The investigation revealed potential motives, tied to inheritance and familial tensions. As the deputies sifted through the evidence, it became clear that the truth was far more twisted and complex than anyone could have anticipated. The house itself was a testament to the chaos that had unfolded. Personal items with sentimental value were missing, suggesting that the intruders had taken more than just valuables. Items like a flat-screen television, firearms belonging to Kenneth, and various pieces of jewelry were all reported missing, their absence adding layers to the mystery. The deputies knew that these missing items were not just tokens of theft, but were likely pieces of a larger puzzle that needed to be solved. Paul Jr.'s suspicious statement, "Everything in the world is up to me, and I can have nothing to do," became a focal point in the investigation. It hinted at a possible motive, rooted in control and perhaps desperation. The deputies were left questioning whether Paul Jr. was a grieving grandson or something far more dangerous. They had to confess to themselves that they were just as interested in the grieving grandson as they were themselves. As the sun began to rise, casting a pale light over the crime scene, the deputies felt the weight of their responsibility. They had a double homicide to solve, 2 lives brutally taken, and a web of suspicion that seemed to tighten around the family. The peaceful facade of Ennisdale Drive had been shattered, replaced by a nightmare that the deputies were determined to unravel. In the days that followed, the investigation would take them down a path filled with deceit, betrayal, and the darkest aspects of human nature. But for now, they stood at the precipice of discovery, the first chapter of a tragic story that would leave an indelible mark on the community and the lives of those involved. As night turned into day, the residents of Isle of Wight County grappled with the shocking news that two beloved family members had been brutally murdered in what was initially perceived as a routine welfare check. The peaceful community was now entwined in a web of fear and suspicion, waiting for the truth to emerge from the shadows of their once serene neighborhood. As the days progressed following the harrowing discovery at the Star's residence, the serene facade of Isle of Wight County began to crumble under the weight of suspicion and fear. The community, once tight-knit and trusting, found itself ensnared in a web of uncertainty, grappling with the brutal reality that such violence had erupted in their midst. The investigation into the double homicide of Nancy and Kenneth Stars had only just begun, and the trail was already proving to be as complex as it was chilling. The initial focus of the investigation had been on Paul Stars Jr., the grandson who had reported the emergency. His suspicious statement, "Everything in the world is up to me, and I can have nothing to do," had left the deputies with more questions than answers. Was his grief genuine? Or was there a darker motive lurking beneath his words, his frowns flickering, making his face seem to break, to crumble, then to resume As the days turned into nights, the deputies delved deeper into Paul Jr.'s background, uncovering layers of family dynamics and potential motives that painted a complicated picture. However, just as the investigation seemed to be hitting a dead end, a new lead emerged that would shift the direction of the entire case. On a crisp Monday morning, Lieutenant Mark Marshall, the lead investigator from the sheriff's office, decided to hold a press conference. The decision was strategic, aiming to mobilize the community in the search for answers. In the first case, Kate Sullivan. She had been the witness to the murders and would be called to the stand. The press conference was held at the local community center, a place that had previously been a hub of warmth and camaraderie, but now buzzed with tension and anticipation. Lieutenant Marshall stood before a sea of reporters and anxious community members, his demeanor calm yet resolute. "My name is Mark Marshall," he began, his voice steady. "I'm the sheriff here in Isle of Wight County. There are a couple of things I want to address this afternoon. First and foremost, I want to provide a status update on our investigation into the double homicide discovered last Saturday in the Rushmore area of Alloway County." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to sink in. This is where the community needs to come together. We need everyone to think about what they may have seen, what they may have heard, anything unusual or suspicious in the neighborhood or surrounding areas. Your vigilance can help us piece together what happened and bring those responsible to justice. The community center buzzed with whispers as attendees exchanged uneasy glances. The call for public assistance was a clear signal that the investigation was reaching a critical juncture. Within hours of the press conference, the first promising lead began to surface. A teenage boy named William Nash had been seen riding his bicycle when his father discovered he was transferred to a new school. A local newspaper delivery woman, Mary Thompson, stepped forward with crucial information. Mary, a reliable and long-time resident, had a routine that involved delivering newspapers across various neighborhoods, including the areas surrounding the Star's home. On the day of the murders, she recalled seeing two men loitering near the Star's residence. One was heavy-set, and the other was thin, Mary recounted, her memory vivid despite the unsettling nature of her observation. They were there just days before the bodies were found. I thought nothing of it at the time, but now I realize how important that information is. Mary's testimony provided the first tangible lead, pointing the investigation toward two potential suspects who had been in the vicinity of the crime scene. Lieutenant Marshall and his team wasted no time in following this new trail. They canvassed the neighborhood, questioning residents and gathering any additional information that could shed light on the identities of these mysterious men. Simultaneously, the detectives revisited the crime scene, meticulously searching for any overlooked clues that could tie the missing items to specific individuals. It was during this thorough examination that they made a significant breakthrough. Among the chaos of the Star's home, the gun cabinet had been thoroughly ransacked, with all firearms and related materials conspicuously absent. 3 cartridges still remained in the pistols, some containing material conspicuously absent. This discovery, coupled with the scattered shell casings and bullet holes, underscored the calculated nature of the attack. She was definitely not. As the investigation deepened, the deputies traced the missing vehicles, a grey 2010 Ford F-150 and a beige 2001 Chrysler Town & Country minivan, to potential suspects. Surveillance footage from local pawn shops became the next focal point. The detectives reviewed hours of footage, hoping to find a connection between the stolen items and the suspects identified by Mary Thompson. Their persistence paid off when they uncovered footage from a nearby pawn shop showing a woman named Sharon Galvin pawning several high-value items. The items matched those reported missing from the Star's residence, including a flat-screen television and personal belongings with sentimental value. This connection was pivotal, as it linked Sharon Galvin directly to the crime scene through the stolen goods. Further investigation into Sharon Galvin's activities revealed that the items had been sold under her name, providing a clear trail that the police could follow. The plot thickened as they discovered that the stolen firearms had also been pawned, indicating a possible motive rooted in theft and the illegal firearms trade. The detectives now had concrete evidence tying Sharon Galvin and her associates to the murders, shifting the investigation into high gear. The breakthrough came when the police identified 2 men connected to Sharon Galvin: Richard Alexander Holmes, a 19-year-old, and Kareem Jamar Mitchell, a 29-year-old. Richard, Sharon's daughter's boyfriend, and Kareem, Sharon's brother, had both been involved in the illegal activities that led to the murders. The deputies' determination to bring justice to the Star's family intensified as they prepared to apprehend the suspects. Under mounting pressure, Sharon Galvin found herself cornered by the relentless pursuit of law enforcement. During a tense interrogation, Sharon initially denied any involvement, maintaining her innocence despite the mounting evidence against her. However, the detectives were unyielding, and with each passing moment, Sharon's resolve began to waver. Richard Holmes, on the other hand, remained tight-lipped, refusing to provide any useful information despite the detectives' attempts to pit him against Kareem. His evasive behavior only fueled the investigators' suspicions, painting a picture of a man desperate to avoid the consequences of his actions. Kareem Mitchell, however, proved to be a more significant challenge. Initially, he lied to the investigators, attempting to shield himself from the truth. But the discovery of a .40 caliber handgun hidden behind a dresser in his bedroom provided the irrefutable evidence needed to connect him to the murders. The firearm matched the bullets found in Kenneth Starr's body, sealing Kareem's involvement in the heinous crime. The interrogation room became the battleground, where truths were unveiled and lies unraveled. Under intense pressure and confronted with undeniable evidence, Kareem's facade began to crumble. His initial denials gave way to a fragmented confession, revealing a motive driven by greed and desperation. The deputies pressed him relentlessly, piecing together the narrative of how a seemingly simple burglary spiraled into a double homicide. As Kareem finally admitted his role in the murders, the full extent of the tragedy came to light. His actions had not only resulted in the loss of 2 innocent lives, but had also shattered the fabric of a community that had once thrived on trust and mutual respect. The investigation, now nearing its conclusion, highlighted the dark underbelly of human nature, where greed and desperation can lead to unimaginable acts of violence. In the wake of these revelations, the community of Isle of Wight County struggled to come to terms with the events that had transpired. The Starrs family, once pillars of the community, were now central figures in a story of loss and betrayal. The deputies, having navigated through a labyrinth of clues and red herrings, found a semblance of closure as justice began to take its course. Yet the echoes of the tragedy lingered, serving as a somber reminder of the fragility of life and the devastating impact of unchecked motives. The community, forever marked by the events of that fateful September, vowed to rebuild and heal, ensuring that such darkness would never again cast its shadow over their peaceful lives. At the commencement of the fiscal year 2000 lives, the king, standing next to his wife, the investigation into the brutal murders of Nancy and Kenneth Starrs had reached a pivotal juncture. With the community of Isle of Wight County holding its collective breath, the deputies focused their efforts on the newly identified suspects, Sharon Galvin, her brother Kareem Jamar Mitchell, and Sharon's daughter Richard Alexander Holmes. The discovery of stolen items at local pawn shops had provided the necessary evidence to bring these individuals into the spotlight. But the true extent of their involvement was yet to be uncovered. As the sun set on a brisk Tuesday evening, the sheriff's office prepared to apprehend the trio. Sharon Galvin, a woman previously regarded as a respected member of the community, found herself facing charges that would irrevocably tarnish her reputation. Alongside her, Richard Holmes, a young man of 19, and Kareem Mitchell, 29, were also taken into custody. The deputies were acutely aware that the next steps would be critical in piecing together the full narrative of the heinous crime. During the transport to the sheriff's office, officers attempted to glean more information from the suspects. Sharon, maintaining a facade of composure, was questioned about her relationship with Kareem and Richard. "Is Kareem your boyfriend?" an officer inquired, to which Sharon responded firmly, "No, that's my brother Kareem Mitchell." The tension in the vehicle was palpable as the officers sought to establish connections between the suspects and the stolen goods. On arrival at the sheriff's office, the interrogation rooms awaited the trio. The atmosphere was thick with anticipation as the detectives prepared to extract the truth from the suspects. Sharon Galvin, under the harsh glare of the interrogation lights, initially denied any involvement in the theft and subsequent murders. Her denial was met with mounting evidence, including surveillance footage and pawn receipts that directly linked her to the stolen items from the Starrs' home. Detective Laura Bennett, leading the interrogation, leaned forward, her eyes never leaving Sharon's. "We have footage of you pawning a flat-screen TV and other personal items that were reported missing. How do you explain that?" she pressed. Sharon's composed demeanor began to falter under the weight of undeniable evidence. With each question, the pressure mounted, and Sharon's resistance weakened. Finally, the cracks appeared in her story. I was just trying to make some quick money," she admitted, her voice wavering. "I didn't know they were stolen." Richard Holmes, Sharon's daughter and boyfriend of Kareem Mitchell, remained largely silent during the initial phases of the interrogation. His reluctance to speak only deepened the detective's suspicions, painting a picture of a young man desperate to avoid implicating himself or his associates. Meanwhile, Kareem Mitchell, Sharon's brother, exhibited a different behavior. Initially defensive and evasive, Kareem's true colors began to show as the evidence against him became irrefutable. The detectives knew that securing a confession was crucial to closing the case. They turned their attention to Kareem, whose connections to the stolen firearms were the missing link in their investigation. During a particularly intense session, Detective Bennett presented Kareem with the .40 caliber handgun found hidden behind a dresser in his bedroom. "This firearm matches the bullets recovered from Kenneth Starr's body. Can you explain how it came to be in your possession?" she demanded. Kareem's facade began to crumble under the relentless interrogation. Sweat beaded on his forehead as he struggled to maintain his composure. I don't know how it got there," he stammered, his eyes darting around the room in a futile attempt to avoid the truth. The detectives, armed with ballistics reports linking the handgun to the crime scene, pressed harder. "Kareem, we know you were involved in selling firearms. This weapon was used to murder Nancy and Kenneth Starrs. It's time to come clean." Faced with irrefutable evidence and the weight of his conscience, Kareem finally broke down. His confession was a fragmented admission of guilt revealing a motive rooted in desperation and greed. "It wasn't supposed to go down like this," he muttered, tears streaming down his face. "We just wanted to get some money, and things spiraled out of control." As Kareem recounted the events leading up to the murders, the full scope of the tragedy began to emerge. The initial plan had been a simple burglary, a quick grab-and-go to alleviate financial strains. However, things took a dark turn when a confrontation erupted, resulting in the murders of Nancy and Kenneth Stars. Kareem's desperation had driven him to commit an unthinkable act, leaving a trail of devastation in its wake. Meanwhile, Richard Holmes remained silent, his mind seemingly detached from the gravity of the situation. The detectives, recognizing his pivotal role, continued to apply pressure, hoping to elicit a response that would either corroborate Kareem's confession or reveal his own involvement. However, Richard's refusal to speak only added layers to the mystery, leaving the detectives to navigate the complexities of familial ties and criminal intent. Sharon Galvin's involvement became increasingly clear as the interrogation progressed. Her role in pawning the stolen items provided the necessary link to the crime, painting her as an accessory to the murders orchestrated by Kareem and facilitated by Richard. Despite her earlier admissions, Sharon maintained that she had no knowledge of the murders themselves, distancing herself from the more violent aspects of the crime. As the hours dragged on, the deputies meticulously documented every detail, ensuring that no piece of evidence was overlooked. The interconnected web of deceit, betrayal, and desperation was slowly unraveling, revealing the true nature of the suspect's involvement. The realization that greed had driven ordinary individuals to commit such a heinous act sent shockwaves through the community, leaving residents grappling with the harsh reality that darkness can lurk even in the most peaceful of neighborhoods. Etienne Deutscht, Rumor Vest Taker. The legal proceedings that followed were swift yet thorough. Kareem Mitchell, faced with overwhelming evidence and his own remorse, entered a guilty plea to 2 counts of first-degree murder. The prosecution, initially intent on pursuing the death penalty, opted for a plea deal in consultation with the Stars family. Kareem was sentenced to 2 consecutive life terms, without the possibility of parole, ensuring that he would never harm another soul again. Sharon Galvin, however, met a tragic end before she could face trial. In July 2020, she passed away at the age of 39, her charges dismissed posthumously. The closure she sought in death mirrored the unresolved pain left in the wake of her actions, leaving the community to mourn not only the victims, but also the loss of a woman who had become an unwitting pawn in a much larger tragedy. Richard Holmes, still tight-lipped and uncooperative, faced the full weight of the evidence against him. The detectives, though frustrated by his silence, knew that his refusal to speak only highlighted the fear and guilt that burdened him. As the legal system prepared to move forward, Richard's fate remained uncertain, hanging in the balance as the community sought justice for the lives lost. The aftermath of the investigation left a lasting imprint on Isle of Wight County. The once peaceful neighborhood now bore the scars of violence and betrayal, a stark reminder of how quickly life can change in an instant. The Stars family, pillars of the community, were gone, leaving behind memories of kindness and service that now served as a poignant contrast to the brutality of their untimely deaths. The investigation into the double homicide of Nancy and Kenneth Stars had taken the community of Isle of Wight County by storm. With the suspects in custody and the truth gradually unraveling, the path to justice was beginning to take shape. However, the journey was far from straightforward, fraught with emotional turmoil, legal complexities, and lingering questions that weighed heavily on everyone involved. As the days turned into weeks, the focus shifted from the chaotic crime scene to the courtroom, where the legal battles would determine the fate of those accused of such heinous acts. The atmosphere in the local courthouse was tense, charged with anticipation and the collective yearning for closure. The community, still reeling from the shock of the murders, watched closely as the legal proceedings unfolded, hoping for answers and justice for the beloved Stars family. Kareem Jamar Mitchell, the 29-year-old brother of Sharon Galvin, found himself at the center of the legal storm. Faced with overwhelming evidence and a fragmented confession, Kareem stood before the court, his fate hanging in the balance. The prosecution, initially intent on pursuing the death penalty, weighed their options carefully. The gravity of the crime, coupled with Kareem's willingness to plead guilty, opened the door to a plea deal that would spare the family the agony of a prolonged trial. In a quiet courtroom, surrounded by legal professionals and a somber audience, Kareem entered his plea. The prosecution, after lengthy deliberations and consultations with the Stars family, decided to accept the plea deal. In exchange for his guilty plea to 2 counts of first-degree murder, Kareem Mitchell would receive 2 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. This agreement allowed the legal system to expedite the resolution of the case, bringing an end to the months of uncertainty and fear that had plagued the community. As the gavel fell, signaling the official sentencing, a wave of relief washed over the courtroom. Kareem's sentencing marked a significant milestone in the pursuit of justice, ensuring that he would never again pose a threat to another innocent life. The Stars family, though still mourning their irreplaceable loss, found a measure of solace in the court's decision, knowing that the perpetrator had been held accountable for his actions. However, the story was far from over. Sharon Galvin, the woman who had unwittingly become entangled in the web of deceit and betrayal, faced a tragic twist of fate. Despite her initial denials and attempts to distance herself from the murders, Sharon's involvement in the illegal firearms trade and the pawning of stolen items had irreversibly linked her to the crime. Her path to justice, however, was abruptly cut short when she passed away in July 2020 at the age of 39. Sharon's death meant that she would never stand trial for her role in the murders. With her passing, all charges against her were dismissed posthumously, leaving a void in the pursuit of full accountability. The community, grappling with the loss of both the Stars family and Sharon, was left to navigate the complex emotions of grief, anger, and sorrow that accompanied such a multifaceted tragedy. Richard Alexander Holmes, the 19-year-old boyfriend of Sharon Galvin, remained a figure shrouded in silence. Despite the mounting evidence against him and his close ties to the other suspects, Richard chose to remain tight-lipped, refusing to provide any useful information during interrogations. His reluctance to speak only deepened the mystery surrounding his true involvement and motives, leaving detectives to ponder the reasons behind his steadfast silence. The legal system, ever meticulous, continued to untangle the intricate web of connections between the suspects. The discovery of the .40 caliber handgun in Kareem's bedroom, matched to the bullets found in Kenneth Starr's body, had been the linchpin in securing Kareem's confession and subsequent sentencing. Yet, the full extent of Richard's involvement remained unclear, a lingering question that hinted at deeper, unresolved elements of the case. As the courtroom drama unfolded, the Stars family found themselves at the heart of a community-wide tragedy. Nancy and Kenneth Stars, pillars of Isle of Wight County, were remembered not just for their untimely deaths, but for the lives they had touched and the legacy they left behind. Their absence was felt deeply, a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring impact of loss. The community, once a beacon of peace and camaraderie, now bore the scars of violence and betrayal. Neighbors who had once shared friendly conversations now exchanged wary glances, the trust that had defined their interactions now tarnished by fear and suspicion. The tranquility of Enosdale Drive had been irrevocably altered, replaced by a lingering sense of unease that took root in the hearts of its residents. In the aftermath of the legal proceedings, efforts to heal and rebuild began in earnest. Support groups and counseling sessions were established to help those affected by the tragedy cope with their grief and trauma. The Stars family, though forever lost, became a symbol of resilience and community strength, inspiring others to come together in the face of unimaginable loss. Detective Laura Bennett and her team, having navigated the complexities of the case with unwavering determination, reflected on the journey that had brought them to this point. The relentless pursuit of truth had exposed the darkest facets of human nature, revealing how desperation and greed could drive ordinary individuals to commit extraordinary acts of violence. Yet, amidst the sorrow and devastation, there was a sense of accomplishment in knowing that justice had been served, providing a measure of peace to those left behind. As the months passed, the legal system continued to process the remaining aspects of the case. Richard Holmes, though still uncooperative, was held accountable for his involvement, with additional charges pending based on the evidence gathered. The community, though forever changed, began to find a semblance of normalcy, the shadows of the past slowly giving way to the promise of a brighter future. The community approaching retirement struggled with great regret, lingering on too soon after the loss of the past, as the memory of the legacy of Nancy and Kenneth Starrs endured, their lives commemorated through memorials and community initiatives aimed at preventing such tragedies in the future. Their story served as a cautionary tale, a stark reminder of the devastating consequences that can arise from unchecked motives and the depths of human despair. The relentless pursuit of justice had finally begun to wind down, but the echoes of the tragedy that befell the Starrs family continued to reverberate through the heart of Isle of Wight County. As the community grappled with the aftermath, the final pieces of the puzzle were falling into place, bringing closure to a case that had once seemed insurmountable. Richard Alexander Holmes, the 19-year-old boyfriend of Sharon Galvin, remained an enigmatic figure throughout the investigation. Despite the mounting evidence against him and his close ties to Kareem Mitchell, Richard maintained a steadfast silence, refusing to divulge any information that could implicate himself or his associates further. His reluctance to speak left detectives frustrated, but it also underscored the depth of fear and guilt that weighed upon him. Detective Laura Bennett and her team continued their meticulous work, reviewing every piece of evidence and every testimony to build an unassailable case. The discovery of the .40 caliber handgun in Kareem's bedroom had been the turning point, solidifying his connection to the murders of Nancy and Kenneth Starrs. With Kareem's confession and subsequent sentencing to 2 consecutive life terms without the possibility of parole, a significant portion of the investigation had been resolved. However, Richard's involvement remained the lingering question that needed answers. The history of Rand and Lydia's marriage was all that truly stabilized the family's frame of mind. The legal proceedings for Richard Holmes were swift yet thorough. Prosecutors presented a compelling case, highlighting his presence at the crime scene and his connection to the stolen items that had been poured off at local shops under Sharon Galvin's name. Despite the overwhelming evidence, Richard continued to deny any direct involvement in the murders. His silence, however, painted a clear picture for the court, a young man caught in the web of his family's criminal activities, struggling to escape the consequences of actions that were beyond his control. Just before the trial, Tiffany Maidit, the official social media personnel, told the jury that the plan was to criminalize. In a quiet courtroom, surrounded by the community that had been so deeply affected by the tragedy, Richard was given the opportunity to speak. The weight of the evidence and the pressure of the courtroom environment finally broke through his defenses. With a heavy heart and tear-filled eyes, Richard confessed to his indirect involvement in the events that led to the Starrs' deaths. While he did not directly commit the murders, his participation in the theft and subsequent pawning of the stolen items had set the stage for the violent confrontation that ensued. He did not believe it was his job to protect prey, and he was careful to make sure Reaper was hardly within hearing distance. The judge, taking into account Richard's confession and the mitigating circumstances of his involvement, sentenced him to a significant prison term. While not as severe as Kareem's, Richard's sentence ensured that he would face the consequences of his actions, providing a measure of justice for the Stars family and the community. The Stars family's legacy endured, not just in the memories of those who knew them, but also in the lessons learned from their tragic loss. Community initiatives were launched to promote safety, support for the elderly, and resources for those struggling with financial hardships, aiming to prevent such tragedies from occurring in the future. As months turned into years, Isle of Wight County slowly returned to its peaceful existence, though the scars of the past remained a poignant reminder of the events that had forever changed the community. The residents, bound by shared experience and collective resilience, found strength in their unity, determined to honor the memory of the Stars family by fostering a safer and more supportive environment for all. The legal closure of the case brought a semblance of peace to the Stars family, who, despite their immense loss, found solace in the fact that justice had been achieved. The community, though forever altered, emerged stronger, with a renewed commitment to looking out for one another and ensuring that such darkness would never again overshadow their lives. Only the stars shone brightly, being the galaxy's best guarantee of universal. Detective Bennett and her team continued their work, ever vigilant and committed to protecting their community. The case of the Stars family became a case study in perseverance, teamwork, and the unwavering pursuit of truth, serving as a beacon for future investigations and a testament to the dedication of those who seek justice. As the sun set over Isle of Wight County, casting long shadows across the familiar streets of Enisdale Drive, the memory of Nancy and Kenneth Stars lingered, a reminder of the preciousness of life and the enduring power of community. Their story, though marked by tragedy, also highlighted the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity for healing and renewal in the face of unimaginable loss. In the end, the community of Isle of Wight County found a way to move forward, carrying the lessons of the past with them as they rebuilt their lives and strengthened the bonds that held them together. The tragedy that had once cast a dark shadow now served as a foundation for a more compassionate and united community, one that stood ready to support each other through whatever challenges lay ahead. As the story of the Stars family concludes, we are reminded of the profound impact that one tragic event can have on an entire community. If you found this story compelling, be sure to like, share, and subscribe to True Crime Theatre HQ. Hit the bell notification so you never miss an upload. Thank you for joining us on this journey, and stay tuned for more intriguing stories that keep you on the edge of your seat.